I grew up in an overpopulated Irish Catholic family in New Jersey. I have 5 older sisters, 2 younger brothers, and my dad was a huge fan of Candy Camera, Alan Funt. Yeah, he loved pulling pranks. And he encouraged us to pull pranks on each other and on the neighbors and on the relatives, on really anyone. And my mom was really into church. So we leaned towards my dad. One day when I was 8 years old, my mom told us that a priest was coming to dinner. And we kids were like, ooh, we are gonna get the priest. We're gonna prank them, we're gonna freak out the priest. My older sister Mary was a huge Star Trek fan, and she gathered us all around and she had created this production called Freak Out the Priest. It was inspired by a Star Trek episode where all these maniacal children were humming, and they would get louder and louder and start off with na 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 na. And she said, whenever I say at the dinner table, please pass the pepper, because we never had pepper on our table because we're Irish and everything's very bland. She said, whenever I say, please pass the pepper, you guys are going to start humming. Na, na. Quiet at first. Na, 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 na. And then you're going to build it until you tear the roof off with na, 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 na. She said, at which time I'll hit the table, and that will be our cue to click your feet underneath the bench, and then cross your arms across your chest like you see the dead people at Preston's funeral home, and then lean back and say, pray for the dead, and the dead will pray for you. We thought she was brilliant. We were so excited to be in the Freak Out the Priest production. So that night, we watched enthusiastically as the priest made his way to our house. And when something happened in my house, there was 8 kids, and so somebody would say something was happening, and then everyone else would repeat it. So we were like, the priest is coming, the priest is coming, the priest is coming, the priest is coming. He's coming up the walkway, he's getting out of his car, getting out of his car, getting out of his car. He's bringing a box, he's bringing a box. We were like, what's in the box? And so we thought, what's in the box? And we watched him come to the front door, and he put this big box down on our dining room table, and he and his mom exchanged this strange knowing glance. And then he reached into the box, and he took out a large jar, a bottle, kind of the size of a large pickle jar, and it was filled with murky water, like the upside down world. And then it also inside the murky water was a baby. Yeah. And it was a dead baby. And we kids were like, what is going on? We are gonna need therapy. And the priest began to tell my mom how to care for dead babies in jars. And the babies were labeled. One was 6 weeks, one was 10 weeks, one was 2 months. They were pre-born babies, and my mom was like the head of Right to Life in New Jersey. So I was about 8 years old, and she was very much into this role that she had. And the priest said to her, you have to be very careful with these babies, he warned, and he placed each jar gently on the table. As the babies bobbed around in this murky water, they were the color of silly putty before it had been pressed to the funny pages. Their faces were small and quiet and white, and the skin around their eyes was tinged blue, and their expressions were somber, and I had never seen such quiet babies before, and it seemed to be contagious. Our normally loud and rowdy group of a circus of little people had now gone absolutely still. You have to be very careful with them, he repeated. You have to protect them. And I remember thinking, isn't it too late? And my sister Erin said, protect them from what? It seemed like a lost cause, protecting dead babies. And he said, from witches. People who practice witchcraft will try and use them for their sacrifice, for their rituals. We searched his face for signs that he had learned about our freak out the priest thing, and that maybe he was just trying to freak out the kids. But he continued dryly, educating my mother on the care of dead babies. Witches? Real witches? Visions of wart-nosed hags on broomsticks flew through my mind. Dark covens of green-faced grannies hissed and beckoned me with their bony fingers to bring them a bottle of baby. I stood in fear and awe, examining the ominous bottles of floating witch bait. And then it was time to eat. Just like that, life unfolded without any transitions, never any lead-ins, or warm-ups, never any introduction periods, just, everything happening all the time when you least expect it. A priest arrives with 3 dead babies, and now what? Yes, dinner. Clear the table, time to eat. The bottled babies were placed on our hutch. They remained there during dinner, sleeping right through our show, though their presence did add a bit more drama. It began innocently with "Please pass the pepper," and we went into full swing, screaming, "Na, na, 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 na." And then, "Pray for the dead, and the dead will pray for you." My mother started screaming as well. "Stop it! Stop it! Jim, make them stop!" My father, a sucker for showbiz, sat back in his chair with a look of pride as the priest stared uncomfortably at his mashed potatoes. If we had known that the babies would be there, we might have rethought our song choice. But then again, maybe not. The next day, the box of jarred babies was moved to our sun porch, the one room in our house that didn't get too much action. In the winter, it was too cold. In the summer, too hot. It was crammed with rickety bookcases that overflowed with books and papers, and there was a forgotten piano and piles of yellow newspaper and broken toys and trash. The room was a way station, a place to store things we didn't know what to do with. It was the perfect home for 3 dead babies. For the next few years, they were sequestered to this quiet orphanage for homeless things. They seemed to be fine in their new surroundings. Time passed without incident. They didn't get out as much as the priest would have liked them to. The trips to the conventions that had been planned for them was canceled, cut short by that other unexpected and awe-inspiring visitor, my mother's breast cancer. Before long, the dead babies, along with the rest of us, would need to learn how to fend for themselves, which is not as easy for them. So one day when I was sick from school, I wandered into the sun porch, kind of bored, and I saw that box high up on an old bookshelf, and I thought to myself, I need to get a look at those guys. So up I went on my tippy toes, reaching for the box. It was heavy and the bookcase swayed, but I managed to carefully bring the box down from the shelf and rest it safely on the top of the upright piano. And I reached inside and I pulled one of those glass jars as I had seen the priest do. And I held it in the light as the baby floated and bobbed. And it spooked me and it sucked me in, all at the same time, holding me captive. I studied its teeny hands and feet, its thin arms, its round belly still attached to a floating placenta, and the sunbeam slid through a window, setting off the flakes and bits that danced in the liquid holding the baby. And I couldn't take my eyes off of this mystifyingly beautiful human snow globe. And then, like a nervous cat not used to being held, it was gone. There was an unsettling time lapse between my holding the jar to the sunlight and then just seeing my hands, and no jar, and no baby, and then hearing a crack of glass against the linoleum floor. My breath pushed out from my lungs as a gasp filled the air. My fingers came together trying to feel for the cold, damp glass. I don't remember fumbling. I don't remember it falling. It was just a wrinkle in time. The baby laid at my feet, its body now freed from the confines of the glass jar. I watched the formaldehyde get absorbed into the scattered books and papers, the fineness of the shattered glass, the sliver as small as splinters just glistening against the dingy linoleum floor. The guilt, the shame, the moment penetrated my blood. These nameless babies and I forever bonded. "What are you doing in there?" My mother called from the couch. She hadn't been getting around too good for the last few months, but my fear of her wrath led me to believe that if the circumstances were right, she would find a way to get up. "Nothing," I replied, trying to sound innocent as I stared down at the dead baby as it laid on its side, cheek to the floor, a fallen bird amid the jagged glass of its broken shell. I grabbed hold of 2 hardcover books and used them to lift the lifeless infant, trying to be careful so that it wouldn't get cut from all the broken glass. I didn't want to hurt it, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. I knew that I should just lift it and hold it and honor it and cradle it in my hands. I knew that I shouldn't be so afraid or disgusted, but I was, and I protected myself with those 2 books as I lifted the baby from the cold sun-parlor floor and then dropped it, books and all, into a big hefty bag filled with junk that had not made its way out to the trash yet. It wasn't lost on me that this poor little bottled baby now had the bad luck of being thrown away twice. I tried not to look into the garbage at all the trash and wet books. I continued with my job of just cleaning and covering the evidence, balling up newspaper like sponges, sopping up the defiant baby juice that knew no boundaries. And when it was done, I performed no prayer or ceremony like I had for my dead fish. Instead, I made the long, cold journey outside to the garbage and buried the bag deep in the bottom of the can. It would not have been my first choice, but at least now the baby was free. Maybe it could find its way back to the earth instead of being stuck in the strange purgatory of bottled formaldehyde. Time moved on and all was well, until one day the priest called. They wanted their baby back. My mother called us all down. Get the box of babies. They need to go back to the priest. My older sister Mary went into the sun-parlor to find the box, and when she brought it back, it was discovered that there was only 2. My mother's face went white. "What happened to the other baby?" she screamed. "Where's the baby? Mary, Barbara, Joni, everyone get down here. Find the baby, find the baby." Our little circus began to move around in a search. I moved stacks of papers and books, trying to appear busy and innocent. How could I tell her that I had thrown out the sacred baby into the trash? She would have killed me. I would have been pickled in formaldehyde for my sins and shipped off to another parish as an example of what to do when you have a weak girl who wants to quench their thirst and their curiosity. "I don't know, Ma. We can't find it," they all shrugged. "Oh, nobody knows anything? Is that it?" She paced the living room, mumbling, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, is nothing sacred anymore? How could we have lost a baby, for Christ's sake?" She lies back down on the couch and stares up at the ceiling, her confused gaze mentally retracing the steps that led to this moment. My sister Erin steps in, trying to comfort her. Mom, maybe it was the witches." My mother leans forward and buries her head in her shaking hands. My sisters and brothers stood around like statues, wide-eyed in wonderment, entertaining the idea that we had had a witch invasion. I felt fear thick in my bones, looking around the room as we waited for more green-faced hags to show up. Evil women on broomsticks would rob us from the rest of the babies. At least that's what I thought my siblings were thinking. I wanted to debunk this whole idea. I wanted to sweep the worry away from my siblings' faces. I wanted to reassure my mother. But how did I tell them? How could I tell them? I was the witch. Thank you.